Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary, where I do the research to try to teach you a little something about what you're drinking. Now let me just start off, there is a very real chance that one of you is sitting in a parking lot outside of your liquor store right now, scrambling to get a whiskey for somebody. So go in, buy an Elijah Craig and or Larceny. Between the two you'll spend about $50, done. Very easy. If you want a slightly more comprehensive list, then stick around and I'll go into some different options for both the budget drinker and somebody more expensive, because let's face it, we're buying a gift. Expensive whiskeys are on the table. Let's start off with the budget ones. When I'm talking about budget whiskeys, I'm talking about things that are both accessible and things that you'll have to drive to a couple of different stores to maybe find. Maybe you call around a little bit, but you're buying a gift. Do a little bit of legwork. It's not out of the question. Let's go for the accessible ones first. First, I want to talk about Old Forester 86. Now, Old Forester has a couple of different expressions that fit within this category, but specifically the 86 is the one that I'm suggesting for you. This goes really well neat with ice, with water, and especially in cocktails. So that is going to be a crowd pleaser, and it's only about $20. Now, I'm going to put the prices below here just so I don't have to say them every time, but these are all going to be relatively inexpensive. Next, we've got Larceny. Larceny has this amazing flavor. It's also very inexpensive, but it's got this oakiness, it's got this spice to it, it's got a complexity that you can really kind of explore, and it's got some fruit notes in it. So there's a lot going on there, and certainly somebody who's new to whiskey, this would be one that they might have that eureka moment where they fall in love with whiskey. Certainly worked for me. Elijah Craig is another one that I'd like to suggest. We're creeping up a little bit there in the price, but this is a really good whiskey. It's got some of the same complexity that Larceny does, but it's a little bit smoother, and in general, it's always going to be a safe bet. Lastly, Buffalo Trace. Buffalo Trace is kind of the quintessential beginner bourbon when you want to step up from something like a Jack Daniel's or a Jim Beam. So Buffalo Trace, you will hear almost every single person like myself who reviews whiskey on YouTube recommend that this is a good one to start with, and it's very inexpensive. Let's go into the budget options of ones that are a little harder to find. Now, there's not going to be too many in this category, only because typically budget options are readily available. However, Weller is the king of this category. There are 3 different expressions of Weller that will fit within this budget area. Believe it or not, the MSRP for most Weller is under $20, which is laughable to anybody watching this who knows much about whiskey, because they're often overpriced. However, if you can find it in the store, depending on the area of the country that you live in, it might be way easy to do that. You can buy these pretty inexpensively. So you've got regular Weller bourbon, you've got Wellder Antique 107, and you've got Weller 12. Now, all 3 of these are amazing options. If you can find any of them, pick them up. Next, we're going to move into the higher price, but also still totally available whiskeys. Now, this first one may be a little bit questionable depending on what the part of the country you live in, whether it's attainable or not, but Eagle Rare. Eagle Rare 10-year is a oaky, delicious bourbon. It's got not a ton of complexity, but it is very good. I personally loved every drop of the bottle that I had. Next, we're going to move on to Woodford Reserve Distiller Select. This is probably the one that belongs in this category the most. It is kind of the quintessential bourbon. Wherever you go, you'll see this bottle. If you look at it, you'll probably recognize it if you've ever been to a bar. This is one that's got some complexity to it, so it's going to be interesting to people, but it also drinks very smooth, so it's easy to drink. This is either something that you might want to introduce somebody to whiskey with, but people who drink whiskey will also appreciate this because it makes an excellent cocktail and it drinks pretty well neat or on the rocks. Next, we're going to go to Four Roses Single Barrel. Now, people on the other end of the camera just smiled when I said that because this one belongs here. Their price point is a little bit higher, but still not outrageous, and it is cask strength, so it's high ABV. It's gonna make for a really fun time. Lastly, and maybe it's just because it's recently on my mind, I'm going to suggest Longbranch from Wild Turkey. Now, this is a very smooth but slightly smoky bourbon that is co-signed by Matthew McConaughey, so it's a celebrity whiskey that is actually pretty good and could give you a little bit of a story if you wanted to give it to somebody. Now, we're going to move on to the higher priced and not so easy to find. When we talk about higher priced bourbons that are also a little bit more scarce, we start opening up the concept of craft distilleries. Now, this could be really good for somebody who maybe loves craft beer, just because you want to keep it in that same vein. Now, there is one that is a little bit more readily available across the country and outside of the country called New Riff. Now, New Riff is a slightly newer distillery, but their whole thing is transparency. They've got 100 proof whiskey, it's bottled in bond, and it's really good. So specifically their bourbon, I would recommend you get. Next, we're going to talk Blanton's. Blanton's is unfortunately very hard to find sometimes. It is it looks like a little grenade. So the bottle itself is round. It's got this little horse on top. It kind of looks cool, and in general, it's something that if you give to somebody and they've never seen it before, it's got a little bit of an artistic wow factor to it. Next, we're going to talk about Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Now this is beautiful, but very hard to find. This only comes out like once a year, I think, but in general, it's very hard to find. And if you happen to see one, pick it up for yourself. If you happen to see two, pick up one for your friend. Next, we're going to talk about Angel's Envy. Now, Angel's Envy is one that I personally got for my bachelor party. And obviously, it gives me a little bit of nostalgia to think about it, but the taste is just beautiful. They used to be sourced from MGP, and then they transitioned to their own stuff, and they didn't skip a beat. They really produce a fantastic whiskey. Next, we are going to talk about Maker's Mark Private Select. Now, Maker's Mark in general is a little bit divisive among whiskey drinkers. Not everybody loves it. Some people think it tastes a little fake, but there's no arguing the fact that it is in every single bar, so it's clearly popular. Once you take away the base level one and you up it to this Private Select, where they take the normal Maker's Mark and then they put these oak staves in it to give it this different complexity and this different flavor, you are talking about another beautiful whiskey at not really that expensive of a price. Lastly, we are going to talk about Booker's. Now, Booker's, if you've ever watched my channel, you know Booker's has a place in my heart. Booker's is expensive though. Booker's is like $80, maybe $75, and it's not always gonna be a hit. So if you decide to buy one from 2019, they come in batches, like 4 batches a year. Don't buy 2019-01, buy any of the other 3 and you'll be good. If you're watching this in the future, check out another video on Booker's. I'm not sure what the rest of them are gonna be like. So let's move on to some unicorns. Now, when I say unicorn, it could mean a couple different things. Obviously, it could mean something like super desirable or super rare, but it also could just be something that's really cool and something that's hard to find. So in this case, I'm going to start off with Kentucky Owl. Now, Kentucky Owl has this creaminess about it, and it's a really complex flavor, but it's just extremely delicious. I've only ever tried it as a sample personally, so I can't speak too much about to the flavor of it, but I do know that this is one that's hard to get and one that is very good. Next, we're going to move on to Stagg Jr. Now, there's George T. Stagg, which is different than Stagg Jr. Stagg Jr., they're both hard to find, but Stagg Jr. would be the one I'd suggest you get. It's less expensive, although it's still higher price point, and the complexity and the taste and just, it's like mouth-watering to even think about. Definitely pick that one up. Next, we're going to go to Colonel E.H. Taylor's single barrel. Now, this one is very hard to find. That comes out every now and then. And if you see it, you should pick it up, but in general, you're probably not gonna be able to find this one. So once again, unicorn. Lastly, Wild Turkey Masters Keep Collection. Now these are actually easier to find, but the price point's a little higher. It's a recognizable brand in being that it's Wild Turkey, and it's one of those kind that's just kind of like special, right? There's a few different these master collections. Woodford does one, Wild Turkey does one. There's several others that do them as well. If you get any sort of master's collection, it'll be something that the person has likely not tried, especially if they're a whiskey drinker, because they come out periodically, but they're also, you know, a little bit more expensive, a little something special, and maybe they'll share it with you. I hope that this gift-giving guide has given you everything that you need to buy the bourbon lover in your life a really cool gift. There's obviously a million bourbons out there, and I can't cover them all, but this list is solid. So, if you want to learn more about any one of these, I've done videos on most of them. Check down in the description or the little card up above to find videos, and knowing more about the gift that you're about to give somebody can help to really elevate the fun. Be like, here's this bourbon, here's all these things that make it cool, you know? Definitely explore that. Whiskey drinkers love that. So, thank you for joining me here on the Whiskey Dictionary, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Cheers.